I know, right? And of course, it's not. Let's see. I think it did work about that. Did my screen just go black there for you?
No, it froze. But...
Oh, no, I can't hear you. Oh, there you go. Okay, cool. All right, that's probably the live stream happening, but all right, cool. We are on. So, all right, folks, we are joined by Rachel, who I would say, Rachel, you were one of the first accounts I followed, like very early on TikTok. Like I joined like 2 years ago, and I remember following your account pretty early. And I was very excited when you started following mine. I was like, oh wait, I was very happy to see that. And all this time, I've had your name wrong, your username wrong, because I've always thought it was AuthenticallyADHDMe, but there's a D in there. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. It was good to know when I was filling this out. I forgot the second D there. But how you been doing? Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
I've been great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. No, I've been great. I've been following you for as long as I remember too. And one of the reasons I love following you so much is that when I see your face, I never know what I'm gonna get. And with so many people on TikTok, the app wants you to niche down, and so you get rewarded if you stay in one lane. And you don't. It's like we're talking politics, you're doing humor, you're doing poetry, like you never know. And that is a unique experience to be following somebody and you feel like you're getting to know them. You're not just getting like tips and hints and, or little moments, but actually like a full human being.
Listen, I'm so glad to hear that, because you're right. You see videos that come across, or people will comment stuff or articles that come out, and they do say that specialize. It's like, hey, if you want your content to be watched by people, you need to pick a niche and you stay there. If you're the carpentry guy, you do carpentry. If you're, a get ready with me person, you do get ready with me. And it's like, people still get accustomed to you. I couldn't possibly do that. I couldn't. And how could you? There's so much in the world to talk about. And it's like, why would you want to talk about the same thing every video? Like, you would hate that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There are people who I love very much, but it's like, same. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't do it either. And I definitely see that in like, my views and everything. If I talk about racism, they do very well. If I talk about anything else, nothing. But that's fine, because it's not about that for me. It's about what do I have to say.
It also makes it so much sweeter whenever like one of your niche topics does very well. Like you mentioned the poetry thing. Listen, I did the poetry videos. I would have bet everything I own that no one would ever give a shit about those. Every once in a while, one of them does really was like, whoa, the poetry video got like 30,000 views. Are you kidding me? That warms my heart. It makes you feel great.
Yeah, totally. I don't even like poetry, but I like that you like poetry.
That's a part of the human experience, isn't it? That if someone is really passionate and knowledgeable, actually just passionate, honestly, you don't even need to be all that knowledgeable, and they're conveying it to you and you can sense like how happy they are about it, you can't help but get into it. Which we're going to go into this later with teaching, because that's a major part of teaching that save it for the rest of the show. But first off, we'll go off and let's get you introduced. So tell us about yourself, like your background, where you grew up, what your experiences were, and what led you to where you are today, roughly.
Oh, man. I was preparing for that question and taking notes as a good student does. And for me, it's so expansive because I'm not, it's like I see my story in so many connected ways. Like I have a deconstruction from cult story. I have a how I became an educator. There's my anti-racism journey. There was, growing up in a Tea Party Republican Mormon household. And, the worst thing I ever could have done was bring home a Democrat. And now I'm like, Democrats are such weak sauce. So like,
right? Like cowards, the lot of them.
I know. Like, I don't even want to call myself a Democrat. Like I'm so far. I'm like, wait, am I a socialist or a communist now? Like I don't know. So like it just feels like everything's so 180. I mean, I even have like I'm no contact with my parents right now, which has been like a whole thing, which is related to the racism and the politics and the religion and all of that. I have like a diet culture journey. Like, so it's like so many intersecting pieces that are all, to just make up who I am. So now I'm here.
The thing you mentioned about the hatred for Democrats and everything. I grew up religious fundamentalist as well. My parents were never as crazy as everyone else, and it could have been a lot worse. But it is funny how like the visceral hatred toward anyone to the left of Milton Friedman. And what's really funny about it is that we struggle on what to call ourselves. It's like, am I a socialist? Am I a communist? Am I just a market socialist, a Marxist Leninist, a Maoist? But to Republicans and people are always like, oh, they're all liberals. Like they don't bother, differentiating between them at all. And so,
yeah. Even my husband will sometimes say like, oh, you're the most liberal person I know. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure liberal just means reformer. Like there are even like nuances in those words now that I see the nuances. And I'm like, wait, I'm not even sure I would, if I'm the most liberal person, I think I'm on the other side of that now. Yeah, no, it's reductionist. They don't know what they're talking about. So they're just like, liberals.
Not only do they not know, but they don't want to. That's the part that really gets me, is that I always say that the problem with a lot of conservatives is that they're intellectually incurious. That's just like they do not care and they don't want to learn. And so when they say, oh, you're a liberal, you're like, okay, actually, I'm not. You've already lost them. They don't want to. So,
I've thought about that so much, and in trying to communicate with like people, from before in my life, they will like present me with arguments, like conservative arguments. And I'm like, I grew up in your political party. Like I voted that way. Like I grew up on Rush Limbaugh. Like my household was Fox News and Rush Limbaugh. Like it was one or the other all the time. So it's like, I know what you're going to say. I've already thought about that and considered it. Have you ever considered this point of view? And just nothing. But it's easier. Albert Camus, I think, called it philosophical suicide, that it's easier to offload your ability to, or your responsibility to choose your life by just asking your politician or your prophet.
Exactly. I was about to say, your religion does that as well. It's a cliche, but it's black and white thinking. Like literally, it's just, and it's why there's any effectiveness at all to right-wing propaganda, because it's so fucking easy and simple. It's all like, there are two genders, which, is like, okay, like you understand why people think that. And like, cause like, that's what you're taught when you're a kid. That's basic biology, but you want to move beyond basic. Yeah. Say what?
Pink or blue?
Exactly. Yeah. Just real, like, are you for America or against America? Like, just like real simplistic stuff that doesn't really, help you understand your language at all. And I didn't mean to go down this road, but you mentioned Rush Limbaugh. I'm on Rush Limbaugh too. And so my dad, when he got out of the army, he started a that's a good point, Steph. Basic biology is not accurate biology. That's true. Basic anything is not accurate, but they stick at the basic level. They don't want to get any further than that. I grew up on Rush Limbaugh as well. And so when my dad got out of the army, he started this thrift store. And so we all worked there, for years and everything. So, I'd sit there all day long, and I had like Rush Limbaugh playing on the radio whenever there was no one in the store. I've listened to thousands of hours of Rush Limbaugh. So it's so funny you said that, because I had that same thought. Conservatives come up with these arts like, hey, smart guy, ever think of this? Like, yeah, like 25 years ago. I remember thinking this exact same thing. I already know what you're going to say before you say it. And I think that kind of gives us superpowers when we talk about this, because I always say that I'm no longer a conservative, but in a lot of ways, I still think like one. So whenever I'm presented with something, my gut reaction is the conservative reaction. And then I process it and think it further and think about it further. And it helps me communicate with them better than most people, I think. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because our like those neural pathways, like those thought patterns are so imprinted. That, you know, it's easier. It's like if you're just like walking down, you know, like in a yard, the path where people walk the most is going to look like, you know, the path, and everywhere else is going to be, you're going to have to like deliberately go there. But yeah, absolutely. It's like, oh, I don't know. I think I got to a point where I stopped feeling like it was constructive to try to communicate with them, because there was no point there. They had no curiosity. They had no, it was like you would watch them glitch in real time. And that's like, well, why am I like, why bother?
I agree with that 100%. I don't go out of my way to try to convince I don't, because like you said, you'll get frustrated incredibly quickly. And it is a monumental waste of time, because you can't change anyone's mind. Like and one conversation isn't going to do it. Now, it can happen over time. And this is what I meant by a good way to communicate with them, is that I put my ideas out there. I say what I think, how I got there, and conservatives listen to it. I don't debate them. I don't argue with them. I don't try to change their mind, you know, not unless I'm trying to make fun of them, whatever. But, you know, I put it out there and I'll get comments. You know, I'm sure you get the same thing. You get comments or stitches from conservatives and stuff. Very rarely do I engage in like actual debates. And most of the time when I respond to conservatives, it's just to, you know, rip on them because it's easy. But I do enjoy when that happens, though, because that means they're watching. And then you have ones that keep coming back and commenting. So like they're still watching. Now, it won't be today, won't be tomorrow, won't be next year, might be like 5 years from now. A lot of them will wake up. They will. But I'm not going to make that my priority. You're right. I always say that most of them can't be saved, but those who can be saved are worth saving, because, you know, we were there once too. So I hope for the best for them, and I'm going to keep saying it. And I find it that it's like a secondary measure, an effective way to kind of get the message across.
Yeah. Which begs the question: how did we get here? Because we could have stayed.
How
would have been easier to stay.
How did you get to where you were? Like, what was the break for you?
You know, I think about that a lot. And I mean, the easy answer is I got married. And if I take that back a step, I married the man I did because I think it was because of my undiagnosed ADHD. I could not ask myself to apply for colleges. So I went to the local community college, which was the most diverse campus, a college campus in my state. And so I just like met a lot of different people from around the world with different experiences. And I was like, oh, people who are different are not bad and scary after all, like they told me. And then I got married to I was Mormon and got married to a non-member Black man. And then I was like, so for me, it was that relationship that, kind of opened the door to being like, oh, people who aren't like me are not bad and scary. And maybe, I don't know, I think that opened the door.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I had written down here right above Reconstruction, I had Mormon ? Because I thought I remember you saying you were Mormon, because that fascinated me. I remember seeing it, I was like, whoa, because wow. Now, all right, I'm fascinated whenever I talk to Mormons, because Mormonism in a lot of ways is it's crazier than a lot of normal or standard Christianity in a lot of ways, but it's also superior in a lot of ways too. I always say that Mormonism like perfected American capitalism. It really did. Like Mormonism, hold on. So
that's my friend.
Highline me. Oh, okay. I was like, what does that mean?
Highline was the community college. She went there too.
Oh, right. I was like, what? But it perfected Christianity too, or perfected American capitalism, because the main problem with one of the many problems with capitalism is how it atomizes society, that it makes your neighbor your enemy and you're always competing against them. But with Mormons, it seems like their businesses, like they work together, and like it's kind of like they stress it so much, and that's why they're so economically successful. But God, the weird stuff though, like
The Mormon Church, in my opinion, is a real estate like corporation that, you know, pretends to be a religion for the tax breaks. I think they're the second largest landowner in Florida, which is nuts. They have, I mean, it's
wouldn't guess Florida. Weird.
They buy land, they build malls. I mean, I mean, it's you know, and just like the fact that everybody's a volunteer. Nobody's paid for anything. Like the idea that other churches like pay their clergy. Like I didn't even know that until I was older. So it's like everybody volunteers, which creates then this like sunk cost fallacy, kind of like I've already like volunteered and I'm doing all this work. And so, you know, it's like to entertain the idea that it's not true is even harder, you know?
Mormon preachers don't get paid?
Well,
I didn't know that.
No, like your local like officers, like your bishop or whatever. No, they're not paid. I think that like the general authorities, like the big wigs, might get paid, but even that is like, you know, they will, and they'll use that to tell you to pay your tithing, because it's like, oh yeah, it's all going to the church. It's not, nobody's paid. We're all volunteers.
That's incredible. What are they? Wow. That's incredible. I didn't know that. I have so much to say about the Mormonism thing, but I saw this. I wanted to verify a couple things that I heard. So the Mormons, I remember, like I was talking to someone about how the polygamy thing. I was like, not actual legal polygamy or whatever, and that creates some logistical problems. You know, if there's not nearly enough, you know, women to go around for everyone to do that. And I heard this thing about lost boys. Like, did you ever see anything about that, where they like carted boys away and like had them work somewhere and just to keep the balance correctly?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Oh, okay. Well, then how did they handle that then? Like, how did they handle that then? Because you would imagine this be a bunch of dudes who don't get married at all in that case. It'd have to be that way, right?
You know what? I actually don't think I've ever asked myself that question. I don't think that it was like, I don't know. I'm going off of gut feelings because I don't know. We should probably fact check this, but I don't think it was everybody who was doing polygamy. It was the powerful.
The ones who could afford it. Yeah,
exactly. So it wasn't like they were hoarding all of the women. You know, it was like, you know, maybe one guy has, I don't know, like 10 or so, but they would also marry other guys' wives. So
wild.
Yeah.
Like they shared them?
Well, no, it would be like they would say, hey, we need you to go on this mission. God called you to this mission. So you need to go, you know, away for a while. And then while they're gone, they'd move in on the wife and be like, and, you know, God told me I needed to take care of you while your husband's away.
Well, of course, it's the Christian thing to do. It's polite, you know. Yes. So the second thing I wanted to ask was so you got married to a black man, and I know about the racism in the Mormon Church. I've read a lot about that, and how did that go over? Like I know you mentioned something about it earlier, but how did your family take that, or your friends?
It was no problem with my friends. I do remember one of a striking memory was my mom asking me at some point if I wanted to marry him because didn't I want our babies to look like me? Mm-hmm. And I was like, like it was.
They will. They will. It's like, no, that's how it works.
But it's like the thing was that the Mormon Church is definitely racist, obviously. But I grew up with the kind of racism, the nice racism of like, no, God created everybody equally. It's just so unfortunate that Black fathers aren't there for their families because, you know, families are so important. So it's like that kind of racism that at the time didn't strike me that way. The historical racism actually was not clear to me, because people would say, oh, Mormons are racist, right? But within the Mormon church, they tell you, right, like the brainwashing is real. They tell you, and they restrict which sources of information you can access. So they will, like, sort of from the time you're very, very young, tell you that if you ever encounter a point of view that is critical of the church, then that's anti-Mormon, and they're lying. And so, it wasn't until, young adulthood that I was like, oh, actually, let me look into that. And then once I knew what to look for, it was there. Like, I could have picked up a book off of my dad's bookshelf and read, God, that Black people were fence sitters before who are being punished for a lack of loyalty to Jesus in the pre-existence. Like, I could have found that in the book, but I wouldn't have known where to look for it. Yeah. Because anybody who told me to look for it, I would have discounted as a liar who is just trying to, do Satan's bidding. But it's like, once I knew where to look, then it was there, and it was very clear.
So the fence sitting thing. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because they purposely hide it. I know. That's what makes it so despicable too. Sight. Yeah, it's like, so the fence sitting thing, I've heard of this. For those who may not be familiar, like, tell me where I get this wrong, but I will get a lot wrong. But so the Mormons teach that there was like this celestial battle before human beings were human beings. And you had the good guys, you had the bad guys, and the souls, I guess, of white people, they chose to fight along the side of God, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then the souls of like Native Americans, they fought against God. And then the souls of Black people said, we're just going to wait to see who wins. And is that right? Or how did that work?
I'm not sure where the Native Americans fell, but the idea was pretty much the people who chose Jesus got to come to Earth and were white. And the people who sided with Satan didn't get to come to Earth. They're in hell. Oh. And they're with him. So they're the demons. And then people of color, specifically Black people, I don't remember what category other races would have fallen into. They just wouldn't take a side. So they couldn't be condemned to hell, but they get to come to Earth, but they basically have to like suffer and like earn it.
Well, don't we all? But it's I remember
logic when you think about it too hard. So
yeah, right. It's I remember thinking of the Native Americans because like there were Black people and brown people, and like if you had brown skin, you could like purify yourself to become whiter while you were on Earth, but Black were exempt from that. And I couldn't remember the reason. I thought maybe it was had to do with the celestial battle at first, but who knows? I mean, it's all a bunch of nonsense anyway. But it's I talked to someone a while ago who was a Mormon who went to a Mormon wedding ceremony. Have you ever seen one of those? Are they as weird as?
So so Mormon wedding ceremonies that take place inside the temple can only be attended by other Mormons who have passed like purity, worthiness tests, including volunteering, serving for free. So in order to get into one of those ceremonies, you would have to have passed all the tests. So I've never been to one because I was never temple worthy. I mean, I was as a young woman, but in order to be temple worthy, you have to either go on a mission. There's a ceremony that has to take place, like an initiation that has to take place in the temple. So you got to pass all of these tests and everything, and like interviews and whatnot. But in order to like sort of initiate that ceremony, you have to either go on a mission. So it's like you do this before your mission, or you have to get married and you do it before your wedding. So if you don't do either of those, then you wouldn't like cross that threshold. So I never did. So I never had to wear the magic underwear.
Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. Because like the magic underwear, I learned that you get like merit badges and stuff on them, like transmutation circles they put all over it for, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, they're like little X's or circles or something. I think. I don't know. I never. It's considered like they say it's not secret, it's sacred. But it's like I would like see these underwear, like my parents in like the wash, and like I would notice, but like I couldn't ask, they wouldn't tell me,
That's so creepy. It's so weird and stuff. My favorite thing about Mormonism was reading about Joseph Smith, because man, like, you read about Joseph Smith, and I have a hard time being mad at this guy. I have a hard time because if everyone around me was that fucking stupid, I think I would be really tempted to do the same thing. And my two favorite Joseph Smith stories are, the first one is about the golden. Well, actually, they're both about the golden plates. And so, for those of you who don't know, Joseph Smith, I think Gabriel showed him some golden plates or something that had the Book of Mormon. Oh, what?
It was Moroni.
Moroni. Okay. Don't even know
the last Native American of his tribe.
Oh, it was the human.
Yes, I think so. So it was an angel. Was it a ghost? Yeah, I think so. It's been so long. I swear, I really. And it's incredible how much brain space just opens up for other things when you're not like preoccupied thinking about all these things. But
true.
Go ahead, keep going.
Oh, so he had the golden plates, and from the golden plates, which were written in like, heavenly language or whatever, and Joseph Smith transcribed them, and someone wrote them. Well, because he read the plates, someone else wrote them, and how it was written is really funny. So he sits like behind a curtain with the golden plates, and he reads from them, and has some dude in the church write out what he says. Mormons believe angels are resurrected. Oh, okay. Oh my God, I didn't know that. I didn't know angels were resurrected humans. Okay, that does make sense. So that does make sense what you said. All right, cool. Thank you, Steph. But he reads what's on the plates, and the other guy, writes out the Book of Mormon. Now, this is obviously nonsense. Why is he hiding behind the curtain? Why can't anyone else see the plates? And you aren't the only one who thinks that, because that guy's wife thought the same thing. So she thought this was a scam. She's the only smart person in the 19th century, it turns out. And so when the guy's not looking and he's finished the book, she steals the book. She steals it, just like hides. And so the guy goes, "Hey, what's up with?" Say what?
And they do it again, and then they
compare. She told him, "Look, if this guy is telling the truth, he should be able to replicate this book word for word, just like last time." And of course, he couldn't do it because he made it up. So Joseph Smith comes out and says, "Oh, I've received another revelation. It turns out those golden plates were incorrect. I've got a new set of golden plates, and we got to write it." And they fucking bought it. They believed it. And it's like, this lady is a hero, and she was just completely ignored, using the most obvious logic imaginable. And the second thing about the golden plates is, of course, no one could see them but him. Not a red flag to anyone, apparently. And he would go around from, city to city showing off the golden plates, but he had them covered in a sheet. And he would let people feel them. They could feel the golden plates. And this, I like, to this day, I've never been gobsmacked so hard after reading their testimonies, because if you read the testimonies from these people who said they felt the golden plates, like half of them say, yeah, it was like, 10 inches by 4 inches long each plate. And it kind of felt like 10. Like half of them said it felt like 10. I wonder why they felt like 10. It's just that it's so absurd. But look, if the people were buying it, of course he did that. Like, why not?
Yeah. I think there was I think I heard that there was a real obsession that people would have at the time. It was a religious revival. And also people were really fascinated with stories coming out of South America. So I think he kind of like melded those two things together. And the thing about with the absurdity, right? It reminds me of Trump. It's like, if you do like an absurd con, lots of people aren't going to believe you, but you're not trying to convince lots of people. You're just looking for the couple of dupes, just those couple. And then if you get, going forward, if you get people from the time they're babies, like, it's easy to indoctrinate a baby.
Oh yeah.
And then they set up a system whereby in order to be eligible for the dating pool in your community, basically, you have to go on a mission, which is creates this sunk cost of I put 2 years of my life in the church. And on the mission, people are so hostile to the missionaries because nobody wants We
yeah,
live
right.
in
Yeah.
everybody's still falling for this, but nobody wants to hear them. And so they spend 2 years in this us, them, the only safe place is the church, the only safe people are church people. And then they, you know, they come back and then they're in for life, and then they have babies, and those babies, they get them from childhood. That's how it works.
Have you run across the sunk cost thing from people who, what's that again? You also pay your money. It was crazy to find that out. Yeah. Couldn't believe that all the money they have and they make you pay. That's like, even prior to, like, we didn't have the balls to do stuff like that. Like, we would work together and try to get the money out. That's crazy. But the sunk cost thing. So
then it's also forced poverty. Like, even if you had money, like you don't pay for your own mission. I think it's like you send in your money to a giant mission fund, and then that money gets like re-allotted to people based on like the cost of living of the area that they're in. And so like, and it's not enough. So it's like you're you know, isolated. You can't be with your friends or family. You're constantly monitored. It's very much a Handmaid's Tale situation where, you know, you guys are the other person's surveillance, and you don't have enough money to be comfortable. So it's, yeah. And it's your own money. You've paid to be there. You're spending 2 years. Yeah.
That's terrible. That's terrible. But I do see how it builds the bonding thing. I talk about that a lot with like military service, that, you know, when you're with someone for a group of people for a year, 6 months, and you're in terrible conditions, you grow incredibly tight with those people and the organization that you work for. So I see how that works. But with the sunk cost thing,
they switch up your partner every 6 weeks or so.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, they don't want people getting close.
You figure they'd want them to get close. Oh, that would.
if you got cool with your partner, then you guys might like decide to stretch the rules a little bit. But if you have a new partner every, you know, pretty frequently, then you have to reset. And it's like, you don't know how strict this person is going to be.
That's because I was thinking that once you said it, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Because like when you're in those circles, you meet someone who's like, okay, how cool is this person? Like, how cool? You don't know. And it takes, you know, roughly 6 weeks to find out, you know, exactly how cool they are. So I do get that. But when you're talking about how
the sunk
cost thing is that when I left my religion and like belief in God altogether, like 12, 13 years ago. And I didn't tell anyone for a long time, but I became very vocal about it. Kind of an asshole, honestly. I kind of regret a lot about what I was doing. But over the years, I've gotten a lot of like messages from people, and they'll say, hey, TJ, listen, you know, all the stuff that you're saying, or like, it makes a lot of sense. And like, you really made me reconsider a lot of this, but you know, I'm married. I've got, you know, 3 kids, and like all my family is Christian, or I'm a deacon, or I'm a preacher, and I've been one for years now, and this is all I know. I get this thing. Like, really, it's you've created a situation where it's impossible for you to go back in a lot of ways. Not everyone switches every 6 weeks, so a pair of missionaries may stay together. Okay, still not. But yeah, have you run across anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the term I've heard people use is that they're being held hostage. That you know, I don't know if it's so true for other sects of Christianity. I would expect so, but in Mormonism, if you leave the church, then you give up your ability to be with your family in eternity. And so essentially, if you don't pretend, then your family is going to be like, oh my God, you're abandoning us. Not just like now, like, but in eternity. And so people describe feeling held hostage. Yep.
That's a weird like version of Pascal's wager. Like I got like in a weird way. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's saying you can't leave the church, otherwise God will punish you. It's like, God already knows what you think. Like, God knows if you're just doing this on a technicality. Why pretend? I don't know. It's
yeah.
So
but your wife might not know. Your kids might not know. And so if you can, I don't know how that works. The logic doesn't logic once you think about it.
It doesn't. Like I've gotten to the point where, listen, I'm not like antagonistic like unnecessarily towards people who believe in God or anything. I'm not. It's ridiculous to do that, you know, because most people do, and most of them are good people, and you have to work with them anyway. If you just push everybody aside, you're not going to get anything done. But man, when it comes to stuff like that, I will speak out against it in a heartbeat, because people are ruining, like, okay, this is a friend of mine. I remember asking him a while ago. I asked him if he still goes to church. Like, we were friends, decades ago and everything. We still are. And I asked him, I was like, so, like, how's your family at church and everything? And I know you still believe in God and all that. He goes, oh yeah. He's like, well, I still believe and I go to church, but I don't go quite as often anymore. I was like, oh, why is that? He goes, well, it's softball season, and my daughter has a lot of games and stuff, and so we travel a lot for it. And I didn't say anything, but I was like, bro, do you realize what you just said? Like, you just said that capital G God, the creator of the universe, like God Almighty, is less important to you than your daughter's softball game. Mm-hmm. And you know what? It is more important than your daughter's softball. It is more important than God, because your daughter is real, and that connection is true. But a lot of people go the exact opposite way, where they're like, oh, hey, look, I gotta serve God at the detriment of my family. It's like, no, please don't do that. It's horrible to see. I hate it.
Yeah. It is sad. It's really sad.
It's so the deconstruction started like with you're meeting new people, kind of like, so your deconstruction for politically and religious came like around the same time then, right?
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now I recognize, obviously, Mormonism more so than other, perhaps because, the focus on like America, that they're really closely related. So once the church wasn't true, then maybe America was not the center of the world. And, the fact that I married an immigrant, was like, oh, they're, it's just like the more your worldview opens.
Yes. The exact same thing. Well, it happened to me a little slower. At first it was the religion. And then I began to realize, oh man, a lot of these beliefs I have are, directly tied to religion, because this is like what people don't understand when you're talking to a lot of conservatives, that they actually don't care how the policy affects reality. They don't. It's like, that's why like telling them stuff like Medicare for all would save a lot of lives and it's a lot cheaper. They don't care. Socialism is bad. And so it doesn't really matter. And so once I figured out that, a lot of my religious beliefs were nonsense, I looked at my political beliefs and just started evaluating them on the basis of their own merit. And like, oh, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And I don't know, that's just fun to watch here. So about your oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I remember, I have a memory of being in high school and writing a paper. And I remember I wrote it, I think, on the death penalty. And I was going to write this paper on why we should, execute more people. And in researching for the paper, I was having such a hard time finding supporting evidence for my argument. And I was like, where is the evidence? It's like, I knew my position was so sure, then why couldn't I back it up? Like, I don't think that was like, I don't think that changed my mind, but I remember that now. Like, yeah, it happens. Yeah.
I wasn't writing a paper on the death penalty, but I had the same, I guess we all come to that eventually. Cause look, to this day, if you ask me how I feel about the death penalty, yeah, it feels right to me. I gotta tell you, it does. Like, it does. It's like you murder someone and you forfeited your right to live. That, I gotta say, it makes sense to me. Yes. However, like when you look at the evidence for this, you're like, okay, there's no evidence anywhere that this works, that this decreases murders, that this makes people act right. No, in fact, it's the exact opposite. Yeah. It's which is so counterintuitive. And like you look further back in history, we executed people for more and more things. Like these days, it's just murder. But in fact, our last capital execution for something other than murder was like in the 1960s. Like, it's pretty recent that we stopped executing people for things other than murder. But then, man, you go back, further and further in human history, you're getting executed for, insulting the king or something. We were X11, and guess what? There were way more murders then than there are now. So yeah, like if you ask me like what position I'm going to support, yeah, I'm anti-death penalty. And, also that's not even taking into account, you know, like 10-15% of the time it's the wrong person or something. Like, yeah, you really can't hold on to this.
I mean, what is the statistic that the police solve, like, is it like 3% of crimes that like potentially like more than 1 in 10 people that we execute like just
it was over 1 in 10.
It's like, that's nuts.
It is. It's just wild, like wild that it's that high. And it makes me wonder, like, how often this was happening a long time. Like, we didn't start using fingerprints to, like, I think the 1880s or 1890s. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a pretty new technology too. We were just going off vibes, you know, and knowing how incorrect
just vibes.
Yeah, knowing how incorrect, you know, eyewitness testimony is. Like, that's pretty crazy to think about. But with all these views, you got eventually you came to where you are now, where you started making content. What made you decide to do that, and how difficult was it for you, or was it difficult at all?
You know, I don't like, I started making content just because I think the ADHD drive to just learn how to do something new. And so I just started making videos about like everything. Like, I would try to make recipe videos. Still one of my goals. Yes. Great point.
Oh,
yes.
True. Very true.
Yeah. So I just started making videos because I was like, oh, hey, you know, what can I create? And so, you know, I made videos about, you know, why CrossFit worked for my ADHD. And then I had a couple, you know, my, you know, teaching practices that were working in my classroom. And then I did a video about having a Black woman as a doctor that did very well. And then I made one about white Christians and lynching. And then I woke up that morning and I had like 20,000 like new followers. I was like, so it just like, it was just this learn to do it by doing it. Throwing, what would they say? Like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And then it just kind of took off from there.
That's interesting. With the, I'm sure the comments from the having a Black doctor one were just all peaches and cream. I'm sure no one, you know, threw like horrible shit at you. Like, how did that go? Like, what was the story about, and how did the reaction go?
Oh, I mean, that one, I mean, just the gist of it was that, you know, I had a new doctor, and they just randomly selected a doctor who happened to be available. And I wanted a new doctor because the one I'd had before was this white woman who was just awful. And when a Black woman showed up, I was like, oh, because we know that, you know, Black women especially have to be twice as good to get where they are. So I knew this was probably the best doctor. And that was the gist of the video. And, you know, the reception was good. People,
really? Huh.
You know, a lot of people were just like, you know, appreciating the appreciation. You know, it was really positive.
Wow, that's not been my experience. Usually, like, I see videos on race. Usually, they're just like dumpster fires in the comment sections and everything. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I mean, obviously, there must have been some bad stuff, but that was like the first one. And in general, it was. Oh, I mean, I got a lot of Black women following me who were like, "Thanks for seeing us," you know, and for the appreciation. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. The ADHD thing, so that's led you down a lot of pathways in your life. So I was a long time ago, like a year ago, I saw a random comment on one of my videos, and someone asked, "Is like, hey, do you have ADHD?" And I almost dropped the phone. It was so weird because I never talk about anything like that at all. And I said, "What makes you ask that?" And he says, "Well, you seem to have a deep interest in a lot of topics." And so, and I thought everybody did. Like, I honestly, that doesn't seem like a weird, like, I assume people have multiple. I mean, how would you even gauge that? Like, nobody's interested in just one thing, right? But I don't know. That was pretty creepy that he pointed it out like that. That was weird.
We can find each other. Like there's something about it. There's like a wavelength, or, you know, there's something about the way we communicate. You know, it's like, I think I've heard somebody, I think it was a TikToker who said, you know, when people tell a story and then somebody else tells a relatable story, they don't like that because it's like you took the attention away. But for me, it feels like a yes and for somebody to be like, yes, I hear your story, and you know, it's like maybe it's something about conversational patterns or you know, the ability to just get hyped up about, you know, like you were saying earlier, like whatever people are passionate about, you know, maybe that's it, but we can always find each other. It's,
if someone is deeply interested in just one thing, they may be autistic. It me. Steph is great. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I never, I didn't know I had ADHD until, actually, I wasn't even sure if I did, honestly, until like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So my brother is a PA in Orlando, and he was telling me that when he was in PA school in St. Louis, that he was having a really hard time. And my brother was like a straight A student. So was my sister. I was a C student. So, you know, I would say, but so he had never struggled in school before. And he was just falling behind. And he said he couldn't concentrate. So he went to the doctor and told him what was up. The doc said, okay, I think you may have, you know, ADHD. And so he started taking medication, and he said it was like, you know, like a storm and then calm seas. He said he couldn't believe the difference. So I was having a problem. Like, I was put on recruiting duty for the Army, and I was great at recruiting. There was no problem with that at all. But the problem I had was now I was just doing stacks of paperwork, just, you know, just right. And I would always fuck something up, always, just like, you know, dozens of pages, hundreds of questions. They're simple, easy questions, but if I'm going to answer 300 questions in a row, I'm going to misplace something or forget something. And that's where it got me. I didn't know that was ADHD or whatever it was. And I took medication for that and was better. But then thinking back on my life, I see it now, because I always had a hard time in math in school. Always had a hard time. It started in 3rd grade. In 3rd grade is when I would start sitting in for recess. I didn't get to go out and play anymore because I couldn't get my division right. And I sucked at math all the way through college. I'm above average at it now, but for most of my life, I've been terrible. And then I figured out the problem. It wasn't that I don't know how to divide or multiply or whatever, but once you start putting in 3, 4, 5 steps, I'm going to mess one of them up. I just am. And so that's where it manifested for me, but I never thought about it as in, oh, I like a lot of things. It's still even weird to say that now, because it just seems like that's what people do.
No, I think from what I understand, you know, what the brain space we have for all of the interests is what they use to answer the questions right, and like keep all the steps straight and remember where things go. And like they have bandwidth for that. We don't. Like it's all a trade-off. It's all a trade-off. Yeah,
you can't max out every category, unfortunately.
Yeah. That breaks my heart for you not getting recess, though. That is terrible educational practice.
Which goes into our next topic perfectly. So what made you get into teaching? And I asked this because it's fascinating to me, because I went to college to be a teacher, history specifically, and I taught for a little while, and I didn't stick with it. I ended up joining the Army. I always joke that I ended up joining the Army instead of teaching because the pay is about the same, and I probably have a less chance of getting shot in the Army. So that's a joke. I love teaching to this day. I still love it. It's like it's one of the things I'm the best at. But I don't teach in schools anymore. What gravitated you towards teaching?
Well, when I was in college, I worked in the writing center because I was a good writer, and so tutoring. You know, I was really good at it, and I really enjoyed it, and I liked connecting with people and you know, discussing writing. And so that's where I met my husband. We were in the writing center together, and so we kind of like did that for several years in college. And so when we you know, basically when it was time to like go get a real job, it's like you go to the job board, which was like Craigslist at the time, and you have to choose a category, like what kind of job do you want? And we chose education because it's kind of like, well, you know, I know how to teach people how to write. So yeah, so I grew up in the Seattle area, and my husband got hired by Teach for America, which gives you the chance to choose a couple of locations anywhere in the country. And so I really wanted to move somewhere with sunshine. So we moved to Miami. And so
good move. Good move.
So he taught in a school in Overtown, Miami, and I had to find a job, and I was like, oh yeah, education seems like the thing. So I spent 5 years working in an online school doing customer service, and then writing curriculum and delivering like online asynchronous sort of learning. But that school didn't last just for business reasons. And so my husband then was working at a school. And so I jumped on that, had a recommendation. So I ended up in the classroom in 7 years there through the pandemic, and really loved it. When I was writing curriculum, I studied literature in college, and writing curriculum was fun because it was like writing an essay, but without the conclusion. It was like, well, I know where I'm going, but I just kind of have to like put all of the pieces there for you to explore, and then you can figure out your own conclusion. So I really enjoyed curriculum writing. And then I got to the classroom, and the kids kind of ate me alive at first. Yeah.
I was that's gone. We did online teaching before school.
Yeah, we did, which was good because when the pandemic hit, I knew what to do, and so that didn't throw me so hard. But when I was in the classroom, the kids kind of ate me alive at the beginning, and when I sort of looked around for help, I was like, hey, supervisors and more experienced teachers, like, how do I handle? I mean, I was teaching seniors, which is probably the the 500 level of teaching boot camp. But I was like, hey, how do I do this? Like the kids won't listen to me. They're being rude. They won't turn stuff in. They won't do the reading. Like how do I make them do it? And they gave me all these strategies. You can like write their name on the board, put a check mark. You can email parents, and so I tried that, and it didn't work. And it kind of then creates this little paradox where I would be like, well, that strategy didn't work. And the response was kind of like, well, you must be doing it wrong. Like you must not be doing it with enough fidelity or enough consistency. And I was like, I just am going to have to figure out my own way to do this. And I did that by actually really connecting with my students, by asking them, hey, why aren't you guys doing the reading? Because it's a great book. Why don't you want to read it? And they made a lot of sense when they said, well, if you tell me I have to do something, I don't want to do it. Like that seems like human nature a little bit. Like if you coerce somebody into doing something enjoyable, it's going to be less enjoyable. And so I kind of like started just shifting all of the ways that I did classroom management as I just like connected with my students. And especially with the pandemic, I was like, I got to a point where I was like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. Like, if I want them to read, I should let them choose what they want to read. If I want to check that they read, I could either spend a whole bunch of time writing multiple versions of the quiz because some kids are going to be absent and some kids are going to need to retake. And like, I could put in all that legwork, or I could just like make it a safe space for them to tell me that they didn't. And so like, I feel like I've kind of deconstructed education in a similar way to politics and religion and all of that.
That's really cool. I have so much to ask you about this. The first thing I want to ask about that is slightly off topic maybe, but you mentioned that you studied literature in college.
Yes.
But you don't like poetry. So what genre of literature were you into? Like, what was your favorite thing then?
Well, it was Western literature. I took a lot of Shakespeare classes, Kafka, Goethe. Yeah, stuff like that. Western literature. I just always felt like poetry was pretentious.
It is. A lot of it. A lot of it really is. So,
like if you're going to say it, just write a paragraph, just tell me what's up, give me a story, or it's like, I understand better now, but I think I missed the window to fall in love with poetry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
When the window was open for me, I was like, this is pretentious. I don't like it. And I would have to go back now and with an open mind. Do I want to do that? That's so much work.
Yeah, I get it. If it's college, yeah, because like I fell in love with poetry. Man, I was a child, like a young child. I remember just we had to memorize poems at the and every like it was at the end of our spelling book. There was tons of poems, and so every month we memorized a new poem. So I still have all those poems memorized, and I fell in love at a pretty early age. But you mentioned how you started teaching seniors first, and is that who you teach now, like high school?
Yeah. So I'm not teaching now. I didn't go into this school year. Now I'm doing curriculum writing. But yeah, most of my students were, I taught 10th to 12th grade for most of my career. The regular honors, IB and English language learners. So all the variety of 10th to 12th graders. And then I spent a year at a homeschool that was actually like kindergarten through actually like a gap year. So it was like a huge wide range of ages. And so I did end up teaching some kids, I think as young as like 6th grade, but we were kind of in this like school where everybody was kind of on top of each other. And that was kind of fun because, you get to see all the ages, but yeah, most of my career has been with the older kids.
So I asked that because I loved teaching older kids. Younger kids was terrible. It was awful. And the main reason, and it kind of goes along with the classroom management thing, is that I can reason with a 16-year-old. Like I can.
Yeah.
7-year-old, not so much. Like it's like there's no real. I mean, they're not. I can't. And like it kind of ties into like you were talking about classroom management and also getting the kids to do the assignments because. Listen, just not to brag here, I'm a pretty damn good communicator. It's the only thing I do well, but I never had a huge problem with classroom management because I did figure out what you were talking about, that if you just go into a room full of 11th graders and say, read this, do this, turn this in, shut up about it, it's not going to go over well. It's not. Like they're going to resent you, and you might have a well-behaved class, but they're going to hate every second they're there. They're going to hate that. You'll see them frown when they see you. Like you don't want to do that for your retirement. Yeah. Say what?
And they have the numbers. Like they're
that's
so
exactly.
Than you. If they decide they're going to take you on, you're going down.
Eventually there'll be a prison riot and it's all over for you. Yeah. And that no one wants that. So when I was doing my student teaching, I had a teacher who kids hated him. They hated him. You could tell, and they had such spite for him. And then they turned the class over to me. And they loved it. Like they loved me. They did the work for. I had no problem with class. And I wasn't even like I was still in college at the time because I understood that. Hey, you connect with them, and maybe it helped that I was 22. Maybe that helped out a lot too. But I have a hard time doing that with a 7-year-old. In fact, it's just that then you kind of like, to me, I kind of had to go into dictator mode. And like, that's not fun for me. I have a lot of respect for the teachers who can do it because they have a skill set I do not, because I can entertain the kids. That's fine. Everything. But it's like, okay, they actually do have to learn, because you can entertain a 10th grade class and then like, okay, that was fun and all, but now we do this. And this is why we're learning this. But it's a lot harder to do that with when the younger they get. It's a lot harder.
Oh yeah, I'm with you 100%. And the ability to connect with your students is essential for teaching them, because if they are, like, for example, on a very practical level, if they're not doing the reading, right? Common problem. The behavior is they're not doing the reading, but you can't address that without understanding why they're not doing the reading. Because if it's too hard and they're looking at the page and the words aren't going in, then you might try an intervention like, okay, well, why don't we get you an audiobook, or maybe you can read a chapter summary before you read it, right? But if the reason they're not doing it is because it's too easy and they're bored, is a different problem than if they find the material objectionable. Like all of those are different reasons, and in order to get them to do what you need them to do, you have to understand why they're not doing it. And like, that's a whole part of the education of the teaching. If Yeah. And so teachers who are coming in just being like, you just have to do it. It's like, okay, well, like literally you can't even teach at that point. It's like you've undermined your ability. You can get them to perform. You can coerce them into doing the performance of learning, but can you actually teach them?
Yeah.
And what I've learned is, just that's what schools want. They don't want they don't want learners. They want the performance. That's it.
You have teachers that walk in and do something that essentially dog trainers do. And you're like, okay, this is not how you teach human beings learn here. Good luck figuring out why you've got 30. Oh God. Oh yeah. That is brutal. Like the workload that's put on teachers, it should be criminal to have more than like 15 kids in the classroom. It is insane that you have like 35. That is wild. And kids run across that a lot. One thing I really liked that about your content when I first ran across it was different ways to approach teaching. And I remember seeing something you posted about how you don't like the idea of letter grades. What are your thoughts on that? Because I had actually never heard that before, and I have a lot of like ideas about teaching. But what's your thing about letter grades, and how should students be evaluated?
Well, I'll start with the problem. The problem is that grades are an external motivator. So when you introduce a punishment or a reward, then the point, right, for the point for the student is to either get that reward or avoid that punishment. And so they're not worried about learning. True. They're worried about getting the thing. And so they, and I saw this in the classroom all the time where students would be like, so what do I need to do to get the A? Because that's what I have to do. And I'm like, enjoy the book, be a lifelong learner. Like that's what I actually wanted. But they were like, no, how many words does it have to be? Like how many paragraphs? Like, so they were focused on the wrong thing because they were focused on the grade and not the learning. And so and it was so exhausting because like trying to negotiate about like, well, what's going to get you the A is totally missing the point. And it's exhausting because then, and then it puts you as a teacher in this horrible position where you're like, oh, well, am I going to give the A to the kid who did everything exactly as I told him to, but he didn't say anything in this essay that was like insightful or meaningful or new. But this girl, only wrote half the word count, but she was so excited about it when she gave it to me. Like, am I going to give an A to both of those? Like, how? And so it's like, it's a mind fuck once you start to realize how subjective it is and that it's really it's mainly about just compliance. And so there's that, the fact that it's an external motivator gets kids focused on the wrong thing. They're not focused on the process of learning. They're not focused on anything except for like, what am I going to get? And what do I need to do to get that? And then there's the fact that the grades don't mean anything. Like the grade is like, it's a reflection of like, did you follow the instructions? Did you do it on time? Did you, like, was there some extra effort? Like, it's so like, if you get a C, it's like, was that excellent work that was done late? Is that average work that was done on time? Is it that, of these like 5 criteria on the rubric, all like 4 of them were great, but one of them was completely missing? Like that C doesn't mean anything. And by the time you have figured out what the C means, you might as well have just said that.
True. Yeah, it is arbitrary. It's just completely arbitrary. It's like we set like a literal letter on this, and that tells me how good of a student you are. It is kind of weird when you say it out loud, but I don't know how else to do it though. And then it's like, it tells you how good you are of a student. And we do this to kids before they have enough sense of their self to know that evaluation is not a reflection of them, that it's a subjective, like it's one person's, subjective opinion. Like they don't know that. They're like, I'm a B. Like they internalize that so hard because they're not there yet. They're still figuring out who they are. And so how we reflect back to them who they are will influence how they grow up and how they see themselves. Yeah.
But I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to answer your previous question about what we can do instead.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I mean, I think it should be all project-based and portfolios, so that at the end of, you know, your term or whatever, it's here's my work, here are my videos, or here's my, you know, here's my speech, or here's my, you know, my essays, or like here's my work, you can see it. And then maybe there's like a dialogue about, you know, what improvements have been made over time, you know, so like a portfolio and student reflections, like there's nothing added by trying to assign a number or a letter to it. Because I mean, how many people
in college they do that?
Yeah, and how many people ended up with like a B and had nothing to show for it? Like,
yeah,
ended up in the trash. Like that happens.
Yeah. You mentioned the portfolio thing, and you know what? I feel so dumb too, because I wrote down examples of things that I've heard other countries do in schools that make a lot more sense to me than the way we teach. And I didn't think about, like, it's almost the same thing you said, but how that could just be the evaluation itself instead of just a method. And I heard about this history teacher. I can't remember where it was, but he was talking about how he did history classes. This is in Europe somewhere. And he said that, so, you know, in the States, you guys come in, it's like, okay, this is history. We're gonna be over, like, you know, the early 20th century. So, you know, we're gonna talk about, you know, the 1910s and 1920s. So you're gonna get in there. You're gonna talk about the Gilded Age. You're gonna talk about, you know, World War I. You have like these blocks set aside that we're covering this topic, this topic, and this topic, and that's what you're supposed to know. And he says, but instead in his class, he says, okay, so, you know, for this section, we're going over, you know, 1900 to 1920. I want you guys to pick anything that you like that happened between 1900 and 1920, and you're going to research it and write a paper on it. If you want to talk about vehicles, you can talk about vehicles. You want to talk about conservation, talk about conservation. You want any topic you want, as long as it happened between January 1st, 1900 and December 31st, 1920, it's good to go. They will find something. You will definitely find something that happened on planet Earth in those 20 years. And I thought, that is brilliant. That is such a better way to do it than the way we do it.
And hopefully you would, like, at the end, have them like present to their peers.
Yes.
So that then they're
excited about it.
Yeah, they're excited about it. And then they're learning from the excitement of everybody else and all of the expertise of everybody else. And the teacher does not have to be the center of you know, the center of the room, or the keeper of knowledge, right? It's kind of like democratizing the learning process.
I love that. So I think about it. It was a long time ago when I heard this, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made, because, like, what people don't understand about, for some reason, you probably saw this a lot, because I saw it every day teaching, is that I saw a lot of teachers wondered, okay, why did you get into this gig? Because you don't seem to like teaching. Kids. Not only that, you don't seem good at it. Like, it's not like you like it and you kind of suck. It's like, it's both, because people seem to misunderstand how teaching works. And it's like, it's not enough to just present information to people. You have to not necessarily entertain your audience, but engage your audience. And if you don't give a shit about this, you can guarantee that your audience isn't going to give a shit about this. And that works so well with that topic there, because you're doing it on both sides. Like you're saying, the kids are going to be engaged because they're going to be looking into something they like, you know, sports or whatever. And then when it's their turn to talk, like, speaking in public is hard. It's difficult for most people, but it's a lot easier when you love what you're talking about. And it's a learning experience for everybody.
Yeah. That is so true. And I think that there is, like, I met so many teachers, and honestly, it did get to the point where, like, I wouldn't go to the lunchroom, because there were so many teachers who would just sit around, you know, the break room or the lunchroom and just talk about their students, and like, oh, these kids think they can get away with, and it's just like, why are you here? Like, and it gives me this really cringy sense that that they could just as easily have been prison guards.
Yeah.
It's like one or the other at the job fair. You want to be a teacher? You want to be a prison guard?
Point flip.
That's our But I mean, think about the school to prison pipeline. Our schools are.
Oh my God.
you're either going to go into the workforce where you're going to need to like do what you're told and don't ask questions, or you're going to go to the prison and do what you're told and don't ask questions.
It's really dark to think about it that way, because it's 100% true that there's a lot of problems with our education system, in that you mentioned earlier on in the broadcast where you were talking about how the school doesn't want you to be a complex critical, or it's not designed to make you a complex critical thinker. And I talk about this all the time too, is that our school system comes from like a pre-industrial agrarian society that we slap this together, where the kids are free during the summer to work on the farm, and educating them is put in place to make a good factory worker. Like they even move you like you're in one. You move from room to room like you're on a. There's even bells, so you move from time to time. It's just like preparing you to work at a factory. And the real tragedy about it is that it rewards a specific type of person. That if you happen to be born as a person who can sit still, take direction, like follow an itinerary, they will hand you the keys to the world. Like, here you go. Like, your congratulations. Here are your A's. Go out. Now you can go to a good school. And like, this is where conspiracy theorists get shit wrong, is that, oh, there's this conspiracy. No, it's not a conspiracy. Like, the people who rise to the top in most professions happen to fit that mold. And that's the system that they're put into. And so when they get in charge, they're going to perpetuate the same system, because like, hey, that I did this, I followed these rules, I was successful. Everyone I know who's successful for the most part did the same thing. This must be right. And then we keep doing this for 130 years, even though it doesn't work for a lot of people, especially children.
Yeah. All of that. Yeah. And then you end up with the kids who fall into that category of like, they can be a good student, they can sit still. Then there are the kids who are not going to fall into that category. And then there are the kids who could choose to be different, but feel like it's not worth it. And we kill their spirit. Like,
yes,
it's tragic.
Yeah. And look, a lot of times they're right. Like, a lot of times they're right. It's not worth it. Like, it's not. There's not a lot of reward. Well, it's a big risk. It's a big risk. You could, try to be different and end up as a famous musician or something, but odds are it's not going to work out that way. And so, you just got to suffer through this, and people are afraid to change it because they don't know what else they can do. So what's like I guess we kind of call it major overhaul. Like the first thing you would change, like if you were, declared Empress of Education for a week, like what was the first things that you would scratch immediately off the list?
It's so hard because I didn't go into the classroom this year, and so many people ask me like, oh, why don't you start your own school? And you should totally start your own school. And I'm like, I actually understand enough of what's going on to recognize that even if we could do it right, we wouldn't. Like, we would be, if we created the perfect education system, we would be so inherently suspicious of it that we could never even let it get off the ground. And that comes down to just our values. One of my favorite books, I know you're not going to read books, but get the audience of The Myth of the Spoiled Child by Alfie Kohn. So good. Where he talks about how at the end of the day, our culture is so situated in conditionality, scarcity, and deprivation that if we had, like, kids love learning. Their brain, they literally don't have context for the world that they're in, so they have to learn things. So it's easy for kids to learn, but we feel like because education is valuable or success is valuable, that it must be scarce. Not everybody can succeed. And so we go into it like just like the values underneath our culture are antithetical to a good education. Just the fact that I think of that book Holes, it's like, and rigor, right? In class, we talk about like, oh, rigor. It's like, because only some kids can succeed. We assume that it's not true. Every kid can learn how to interpret a novel, right? But because we assume that not every kid can succeed, if every kid is succeeding, we just make it arbitrarily harder because not every kid should be succeeding. And so like that, if like learning is fun, but if kids are having fun learning and they're not stressed out, then something must be wrong, right? Like we would have that gut feeling, even if we were doing it right, even if kids were excited to show up to school and they were doing all these projects and learning all of it, like we could do that. But at the end of the day, a parent is still going to be like, oh, but is my kid going to be competitive? Like, we wouldn't be able to do it because it's about our gut feelings. It's about our puritanical like roots. It's about white supremacy. It's about all of those things. And so I don't know. But if I was going to be empress of education, I would get rid of competition and grades. We don't need any of that. Projects, student choice would be huge. Just open it up to let kids learn, you know, like that project of 1900 to 1920s. That's a great idea.
You're so right about if everyone's succeeding, we would think something's wrong. I would too. I was like, hey, hold on. It's like, oh, wait a minute here. This is you're telling me everyone's doing well. This is way too easy. We need to crank up. That's the first thing I would think. And it is. You're right. God damn it. You're right. I hate that, but it's true. Which is funny coming from someone like me, because like my goal is that everyone should succeed. But if I saw a system where everyone is, I was like, okay, this is cake. We need to toughen these kids up. What's going on here? You're right. God, that's kind of dark. That's so true.
It is. And that's why we can't fix it, because at the end of the day, if it's not, you know, if it's not scarce, and if you didn't,
we can make it better. If we can't fix it,
we can make it better.
That's the best we can do.
And I think that getting rid of grades would turn the attention back to the learning. The problem with that, of course, would be the transition period, because any kids who've experienced grading or know about it from their siblings or their parents are going to have a hard time not being like, oh well, if there's no grades, it doesn't matter. Like that period would be a struggle, but maybe we could get through it.
I have two examples that will prove your point. Absolutely. The first one is the metric system. That we tried to introduce the metric system. I think it was either in the Carter administration or maybe the first Reagan. It was like somewhere between like 76 and 84, somewhere along that timeline. I mean, I don't remember it, but that's what I read that it happened. But because it's so strange that we don't have the metric system, like this ridiculous system. That's okay, kids. There are 12 inches in a foot. There are 3 feet in a yard. There are 1,760 yards in a mile. There are 5,200. It's like, what? Like, this isn't, it's like, oh, here's a system that everything's a 10. It makes perfect sense. And we're like, nah, we're going to stick with the 5,280 feet thing. And it's like, because we're just so resistant to change that even when offered an objectively simpler and easier system, we rejected it. And the other one I did live through, so did you, Common Core math. I remember, like, it started a long time ago, and people were losing their mind at like this new math they hadn't seen before, Common Core standards for math, I guess. And I understand why parents were, you know, like apprehensive and stuff, because one thing every kid does is when you can't figure out your math, you ask your parents, and their parents don't know how to do this. They're all confused. And then like people would like share articles and talk about this math is too hard. It takes too long. And then I read about it, and they like found these standards based on like the way they did math, I think in like South Korea and Singapore, which, folks, if you want to look up the scores on this, they're doing a little bit better in math than we are. Like, I could understand if like we were doing a bang up job in math. Like, no, let's learn from the folks. Like, nope, we rejected it because we don't want to learn. So like changing how they're evaluated, we would bomb that as well. Ooh, I don't know how to pronounce that. The value of school does not depend on its prestige or its ability to train students to face up to the necessities of life, but rather on the degree of the enjoyment. Oh, that's true. Hey, it's like, it's actually it's the title of this live. If you saw it, Rachel, it's like why we love learning but hate school. And that's something that I say all the time, is that kids do love learning, but the way school is set up, it's just absolutely brutal. So you're correct on all counts on that. And the last thing I want to mention was holes. You're right. I didn't bring Mary Talbot, but there's a part of holes that I love the best, and that's when he first gets to the prison camp for the children. And a weird phrase to say, but prison camp for the children. And
I think we call them plantations.
Oh, even better, right? Even better. Wait,
you can get married there.
Yeah, when I was a recruiter, there was this girl who worked at one of the schools that I had, and she was her family were Mexican immigrants, and during the off year of school, they would go work on the farms here in Indiana. They plant soybeans one year and then corn the next year. And I was driving her from like school to the recruiting station or something. And she was talking about how, school ends next month and we're going to go work on the plantation. I said, the what? And she said, the plantation. I was like, they still call them places. Like, yeah, they still call. I was like, you think they would have gotten away from that word? But nope. It's technically the correct word, but you would have figured that in the year of our Lord, 2021, they'd be like, nah, we're not going to call these plantations anymore. But yeah, that's pretty fucking wild.
It is. I mean, it's so dystopian, Orwell, in 1984, it's like it's this dystopia where they call everything the opposite of what it is.
The doublespeak, yeah.
I think about that all the time. In the book, it's like the military is the Ministry of Peace.
Yep.
And I think about like whenever I hear people refer to like our justice system, I'm like, what justice are you talking about? Like, I live in my community. And I swear we're going to talk to our HOA about this. My like gated community is called the Colony. And people get married on plantations. Like nobody's getting married in Auschwitz. Like
it's so fucking weird. I know. Yeah, this is
weird.
I thought Department of Defense is another doublespeak one. That's defending what? Like what's going on here? And Noam Chomsky brought up one about the peace process. And what the international peace process is whatever the United States wants in foreign relations. Yeah. Anything that's outside of that is against the peace process. Like it's real obvious shit, And I was God, that's so fucked up what they call it. But I was in the Army. They have these programs called BOSS, Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers. And it's a good program. Is that because like the married soldiers get all of this cool shit. They do with their families all the time, but they started the BOSS program for the single guys. And so they would like take you to amusement parks and stuff like that, at different states. It was pretty fun. And then there's one time they said, okay, if you're a single soldier, sign up for this BOSS event and we'll go to this resort on Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. And they showed pictures, really nice. So got there and I had like this giant suite all to myself. I was like, man, it's on the beach. And the name of the resort was Kingsford Plantation. Kingsford Plantation. I was like, okay, look, I get that this was probably a plantation in 1855, but you don't got to keep calling it that, folks. We can move on from these names. It's so fucked up how we hold on to like, and I try not to be like the annoying lefty that's like, whoa, that word meant this 400 years ago. So, okay, like I'm not going to like or we need to change manhole cover to person hole. Cause like, I'm not going to be that guy about shit. Yeah. But look, I think plantation is a pretty good line in the sand that we should just let that word go. That's just my one man's opinion.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that the language frames our reality.
Yes.
And so words matter. I mean, I'm with you on person hole. But we don't need person hole. But if you're just walking around or like all the time, we love to watch like real estate shows or renovations, like buying houses, etc. And every time I hear like, oh, this rustic old colonial like design,
I hadn't thought about that one. Oh no,
we need to, it's like when you do that, like you normalize colonialism. Like, it's like, oh yeah, it's just the colonial army. It's like, do you ever think about what that means? Like it's so normalized that people don't think about what that means. And plantation's another one. I mean, we should agree on these things.
We should drop that one, folks. That the first one to go is plantation. Okay, look, we didn't ask you to take Aunt Jemima off any box. No one asked for that shit. Get rid of plantation. That's what we would actually like. You know, one that I learned earlier last year. I was reading about Tarzan, and so Tarzan means white skin. Like that's what the word means. I forget which language. Maybe it was Swahili or something like that. I was like, okay, all right. I mean, can't argue with that. Tarzan was a white guy in the book. However, the word gorilla is a Greek word for like African woman. Like that's what gorilla means. And I know, right? It's like the more you learn about language, it's just so fucked up. It's just like, oh God. And I stumbled across this on accident because, well, I mean, gorillas are fucking cool. They're fascinating, right? And so I was looking something up because I was talking about cryptids to somebody, and gorillas were cryptids for a while, for Europeans at least, because when Europeans got to the Congo.
I don't know what that word was. Cryptid?
Cryptids?
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Yeah, cryptids are like cryptozoology, like animals that may or may not be real, probably not, like Bigfoot. Animals that like the Native American firebird, like a pterodactyl.
Oh, I love that. Like reindeer. People are confused about whether or not reindeer are real.
Reindeer? What?
Like people are confused about whether or not reindeer are mythical creatures.
Really?
Or if they're real. Yeah.
Oh my God.
We were somewhere recently where they served us like reindeer, like sausage or something. And there was somebody in our party who was like, I thought those were just from the Santa.
Oh, that's crazy. Oh, that's weird. Yeah. Like Loch Ness Monster, Sasquatch, stuff like that. Yeah. So
I love that. I learn something new every day if you're not careful.
Yeah, when European explorers got to the Congo, they were talking, to the indigenous population there, and they mentioned, there are these giant apes that live out in the jungle, that are like 500 pounds with silver backs. Like, get the fuck out of here! Like, no, they didn't believe them. They thought they were making it up. And then it wasn't until like 1905 that Europeans found out gorillas were real. Like, it's incredibly recent. Like when they found this shit out. But I was checking up on the story, and that's when I ran across the Tarzan thing. It's like, oh man, I wish I hadn't have read that. That kind of depressed me even more. It just made me even sadder. But no, the crypto stuff is fun because I have a lot of friends that are into like stuff like that. I have like 3 levels when it comes to cryptids. Level 1 cryptid is a cryptid that may be real, but I don't think it's real. Like Bigfoot, for example. Like I don't think there's any chance that, there's no native primate species in North America. And the fact that there's a giant one out there that no one's found, it has a population to sustain itself. No, not happening. But
Cain? Like didn't God, when Cain killed Abel and then lied to God about it, he got cursed to walk the earth forever, and he's Bigfoot now.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Is that Mormon mythology? I don't know.
Well, I thought I don't know. I thought Mormonism taught that black people were the descendants of Cain, and that was the curse.
I don't know if that's more Mormon specific or if that is an idea, a racist idea that came out of the 1500s or so when they were trying to figure out how do we justify slavery. But I'm not sure that was no, Mormons are the black people were the fence sitters. They didn't.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're talking about that's right. Okay. Oh yeah, that's true. A lot.
But I actually had yes. In college, I took a physical anthropology class, and my professor was like the leading expert on Bigfoot research. And we were like, "Oh my God, is Bigfoot real?" He was like, "No."
Of course not. Of course not. Yeah, it's like people have like TV shows. I was like, no, listen, people, like we would have found a body, we'd have found some scat, we'd have found like anything to prove it's like, no, it's not there. So yeah, but there's nothing about Bigfoot that's like supernatural. Like it could be real, Yeah. And then the second level is like ones that are like too weird to even exist, like chupacabras. Like that's not that doesn't fit anywhere in like the taxonomical tree. You have this weird like lizard mammal thing. No, and then the third one is just absolutely not true at all, like skinwalkers, like a creature that can transform itself. No, get the hell out of here. But those are like my 3 levels of cryptids or whatever. But I guess gorillas would have been at the top level because they ended up being real. But I ran off track. I was talking about with Holes, because you mentioned Holes. Like one of the best lines that I've ever read was from Holes. And it was when he first gets to the child prison camp, the plantation, and he gets there and he digs his first hole. Like he has the shovel and he measures it 5 feet by 5 feet. Takes him all day, back-breaking labor, and he's sweating, and he's drenched, and he gets up, and the guy next to him is like, hey man, great work. The first hole is the hardest. And then the next day he goes out there, digs the same hole, steps up, and the guy says, good work, man. Second hole's the hardest. I love that. I use that all the time. And I use that with people who get into content creation. You have like younger, but wrong word, but newer content creators. I don't know how old they are, but a lot of them are sadly a lot younger, which is kind of sad. Like when I asked to do these lives during the week, sometimes people get with me, or on TikTok I do the lives, and like, oh yeah, I wish I could, but I got midterms to study for and finals. I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, like it's kind of depressing. But whenever newer ones come up, and I use that on them, it's like, that's my first video. It's like, good job, first video is the hardest. I can't wait for the second one. Second video is the hardest. But that's what do we got?
I love it.
Black people. There's one list of genealogical X begat by the Old Testament, some race. So what you're probably referring to, Steph, is the curse of Ham. That's probably my guess in that. So we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. I went a little longer, but sorry to keep you, Rachel. But
this is a good time.
But after the flood, Noah has 3 sons: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Mm-hmm. And Shem is the father of like Semitic people, like people in the Middle East, and Japheth is the father of European people. And Ham is the father of African people. No mention on who's the father of people in the Western Hemisphere. It's almost like they didn't know it was there. Very strange. But Ham's son Canaan. So Noah gets drunk after he gets off the flood.
Oh God!
Off the boat. Yeah, Noah gets drunk, and then he passes out naked in a room somewhere. So his youngest son Ham walks in and sees Noah naked, and then he goes to his brothers and starts talking shit about him. It's like, yeah, the old man's passed out drunk and naked. So Shem and Japheth walk in backwards holding a blanket, and they, cover up their father. And so Noah wakes up, and somehow he finds out that Ham saw him naked, was talking shit about him, and he goes, and what's placed upon him what is called the curse of Ham. And the curse is that Ham's son Canaan will now be a servant of servants, and his descendants will be servants. And a lot of weird things about that story. First, why did Canaan get cursed? Canaan was minding his own business somewhere, and Ham honestly didn't do anything wrong either. Like, you were the one that got drunk and passed out naked, Noah. Why are you mad at your son for talking shit to you? And the Bible uses that story to justify why the Canaanites, who the Hebrews, the children of Israel, came and conquered and massacred according to the Bible, it didn't really happen in real life, but to conquer those people and everything. That's like, oh, well, they weren't real people. They were descendants of Canaan. But Europeans use the curse of Ham to say, Canaan is Ham's son, and Ham is the father of African people. That's how we can justify enslaving these folks, because God said we could do it, thousands of years ago. So yeah, for those who weren't familiar with that, but yeah, that's a pretty wild story.
It's so fascinating how contrived racism was.
My God, burning so many calories to get there.
Exactly. And at the time, so many people just assume, well, people look different, so I just assumed that they were animals, and so it was all just a big misunderstanding. And no, they were like, okay, how, yes, the universities are all in Africa, but how do we make it work? And then they take a couple stabs at it, and here we are. I mean, 500 years later.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's in Zimbabwe, and it's like this ancient stone city.
Great Zimbabwe is on my bucket list.
Great Zimbabwe, is that what it's called?
Yeah, if we're thinking of the same thing. But yeah.
Almost certainly. Almost certainly.
Castles and a whole medieval city, right?
Yeah, it's like it's up to par with medieval Europe, and it's like Stone Age. It's like way back in the day. And so European explorers got there. They said, there's no fucking way this was built by African people. They said, I don't know who built this, but it was a long time before they even accepted the fact that, Black people weren't just animals wearing clothes. It's like they would not accept it. And there's no reason that they had to accept. They were being conditioned, their whole lives and for generations to think, okay, well, clearly it's kind of like where people they'll see ancient stuff and it's super advanced, and it's like, well, it must be aliens. Like, there's no way, there's no way humans could have died. I know it's the same thing, but
no way brown people did.
No. Yeah, that goes into, I was going to ask about like our greatest pet peeves, and I think we covered a pretty big one right there. But that's one that when people just refuse to acknowledge like what's right in front of you, and like they don't Occam's razor this shit. But I was like to end on something light with these. Like, do you have any random pet peeves that get you? They don't even have to be related to anything we talked about, but something that really bothers you.
Okay, I wrote them down.
Oh, great.
Better get used to it. That because something bad is going to happen to you later, we need to start doing it to you now.
Ooh, I like
Anytime
that.
I hear that, I'm like, nope, hard pass.
I like that.
Yeah.
How about making stuff better?
The bait and switch, that gets me so bad. Like I like measure my energy in a specific way. And if it's like, oh, now the plane is delayed, or like something just gets switched at the last minute, I'm like, no, that's a big one for me.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. I see.
What about you?
I thought you were talking about something else when you said bait and switch. I thought you were like talking about like an argument in discourse, because I think it's called a Mott and Bailey with argument, because I run across that all the time where I hate it's just so common. And you'll talk about like, say like sexual assault cases or something, and you're like, I think that if a woman comes forward with a sexual assault case, that you should take it. Oh, so you're saying no woman has ever lied? It's like, okay, get the fuck out of here. That's not what I said, but they switch stuff up on you, and I hate that so much. I hate it. It happens all the time with arguments. It just really kills me.
Yeah, one of my favorite projects I did with my students. If you have ever read the story "Love is a Fallacy," I highly recommend it. It's this incredible. I'll ruin it for you, but it's about this guy who is like wooing this girl, but she's dumb, but she's pretty, and you can teach a pretty girl to be smart, but you can't fix an ugly girl to be smart or something. I don't know. So, and what he does is, in order to fix her, he teaches her about all of these logical fallacies, and then at the end of the story, he like professes his love, and she turns them all around and she's on him.
I like that.
But one of my favorite projects I would do with my students is I would read them that story, and then I would have them write a story in which it featured several fallacies. And so we had like a list of 50, and different groups would choose fallacies and then write their own story featuring, explaining what that fallacy was. So Slippery Slope, Mott and Bailey.
I do like that story, because love is like, if you were a space alien or a computer, you're like, this is very illogical. Like, none of this makes any sense. Why are you acting this way? Why are you doing this? Like, love is illogical in a lot of ways. And to the extent that like even sacrificing yourself, like literally, like your life, if you love someone, you would do it. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense, but you love them. You want them to be okay. And it is, I do like that. That's pretty good. The stuff that I wrote down was, this is a minor one, but you ever, like say you're driving to a grocery store or something, and then someone is on the street, and you kind of give it the same time. There's a weird way of who has the right of way, and you like wave them past. They're walking, and you wave them past. No problem doing that. But if I'm in that situation and someone waves me past, I'm gonna do one of two things. I'm either gonna say thank you, or I'm going to put a little pep myself across the street. Probably both. I'm probably going to wave and scoot my way across the street. But when I wave someone, they give me the eye lock and then just saunter across the street. Fuck out of here. What are you doing? Like, that is the rudest shit I've ever seen. It's rare, but most people give the wave and they do the little shuffle or whatever. But man, one or the other, but certainly not both. That one always gets me. I hate that shit. And I can't read what I wrote. Oh, okay. This one I actually wrote down seconds before I started this live. I was just going through Instagram, which I don't think I figured it out how to get the live thing. I think it went live for a couple seconds and then died. But I saw this Instagram video, and it was Beyonce, and she was singing on a concert, and there was a little girl at the front of the stage, and she had some learning disability, and she was blind. And the caption showed that, the girl couldn't see, but Beyonce let her feel her presence. She was like touching her face and everything. And so Beyonce was singing to this girl, and then she told her to sing the lyrics, and like the girl would sing the lyrics into the microphone. And then Beyonce like leaned down, and she was like, after she had talked, she had sang the girl for like 30 seconds or so. And she reached out and she was like playing with her hair, and then she touched her chin while she was singing. It was so beautiful. It was like, it made me cry. Like, and the girl was like, she was beaming. She was just like she was just glowing and stuff. And it was one of the happiest things I've ever seen. And then someone commented, well, you know, I don't like when people touch me. Who cares? This is not about you. Like, this is, no one asked how you would feel if someone touched you. This girl clearly wanted it. And it's like, she's like, I don't like when people touch me like I'm a child or a dog. This is a child. Like, I don't know. I hate when people take something that's not about them and then just like, well, here's how I would feel. It's like, well, when I ask that, then you can tell me. But I don't like when people just turn everything onto themselves. It kind of goes back to what you were mentioning when people tell stories and how people say, look, don't turn everything into you. Yeah, I get it. Like, I get it a lot sometimes, but those are mine. But I don't know.
Man, you made me think of a TikTok one. I hate it when people are making a point in their TikTok video and they're multitasking. You could make the point faster if you were not trying to put your groceries away at the same time.
Oh, interesting. Because a lot of people do that.
Yeah, they do. It's apparently like supposed to make it more interesting or whatever. And I'm like, I think it just makes it slower. So it kicks me off. I don't watch them.
So that's what I don't do that. I don't know how I could, honestly. It would seem weird, but I do see people. It doesn't bother me quite as much, but I can see where I was like, hey, just come on. Because I don't like it when TikTok seem like, well, look, these are all performances. Like I do my best to make mine as conversation as possible, but it is a performance. Like they're meant to look spontaneous, but they're not, you know. And so I get that, but I like when it's overproduced. Or like it's trying to sell you on something that's not real. And how do I say this on YouTube without getting in trouble? Fungi. Fungi. I'm a big fan of fungi. And so I like eating them, and they're fun, except I can't watch TikTok after I eat them because you get really good at seeing like the micro movements in people's faces, and you can tell when someone's bullshitting something. Like it just it's like jumps at you. And so every time I watch a TikTok after eating the fungi, I was like, it's so off-putting because I can tell they're putting like, that's not who you really are. It's like an uncanny valley thing. You're pretending to be someone else. And so that's probably what would happen if I saw one of those while on the fungi, because it's like, stop it. Just tell me what you have to say. You know, like, I don't know. It's weird, but that's kind of my thing.
That's fascinating.
Say what?
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's good shit. So, all right. So thanks for joining, Rachel. I really appreciate it. I enjoy your work, and you do a great job. I have for a long time. One of the people I follow the longest. Do you want to go ahead and give a plug to the good folks out there?
Give a plug. Well, thank you so much. This was super fun. Oh my God. What time is it? Like this is
5:15.
Amazing way to spend a Sunday afternoon. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Follow me. I'm on TikTok, AuthenticallyADHDMe.
I love it. Thanks so much. Well, I appreciate it. Well, love to do this again sometime. Appreciate it. And
yeah, hit me up. Let's do it again.
Love to. Have a good one.
Have a good night. Bye.